Okay, today's lecture is on prejudice and discrimination. It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. I think I have this on here, isms out there, not just racism or sexism. One of my favorite ones to talk about is ageism. Not just discrimination against all people, but this whole idea that young people don't know anything, or discrimination on your appearance, oh, you don't look normal, you dress weird. So, or classism, we're right here in Scottsdale, Arizona, right? That kind of ties back into appearance. Now, two movies, if you want to do extra credit, you have to see this movie, Moonlight or Loving. Either one of them is just amazing, and they both relate to prejudice and discrimination. This one won the Academy Award for Best Movie of the Year, and this one is about the first interracial couple. I think it was in South Carolina or somewhere where they were thrown in jail for marrying each other, and then it went all the way to the Supreme Court. It's a very good movie. Okay, one of my favorite people, speaking of prejudice and discrimination, is Martin Luther King, and he says, I refuse to accept the view that mankind is so tragically bound to the starless midnight of racism. I just love how he talks. That peace can never become a reality. I believe that unconditional love will have the final word. This is why I love him, because people are so pessimistic, including me some of the time. Now, when I talk about prejudice and discrimination, I'm going to talk about three things. You probably remember this from the attitude section, but prejudice is a negative attitude. Like, I don't like green people. Affect is like when you get around green people, you get icky feelings. This is kind of like when my dad gets around gay people, he thinks he's going to catch the gayness like Ricky Bobby does. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I feel bad. And behavior is how you treat them. So this is different. What you think about them and how you treat them. This is going to be today's lecture. Okay, so I have this graph on here. I don't know if it makes sense now. If we think about these graphs that I'm showing, would you vote for a black candidate, or would you move away from, your neighborhood of a bunch of black people moved in? It's like, yeah, but we have had, a black president, so obviously more than 50% of the people voted for him. But back in the day when I was growing up, that didn't seem like it would ever be a reality. Now, a lot of people might think racism is gone, but whatever. We could talk about all the incidents of late with the new rise in kind of white nationalism, but subtle racism was what I'm going to talk about, because you have to be sneakier about it now. So you could call it sneaky racism. This is why it's like, if you're a racist, you might as well just stand up and be like that. Like, this is what I can't stand about some neo-Nazis. You get the 88 tattoo. Why 88? Because it's the eighth letter, HH, how. If I have to go into it in that much detail, just put a big swastika on yourself and be done with it. You know what I mean? But in a study about sneaky racism, it's an older study, but you'll get the point. In Chicago, the reason I like it is they went to 90 dealerships and they sent out four kinds of people to these 90 dealerships. And these four people visited the 90 dealerships: a white male, a white female, a black male, and a black female. And they try to get the best price on this car that the researchers know from the manufacturer suggested retail price is supposed to be $11,000. Now, on average, across these 90 dealerships, these are the average prices that the people paid. The white guy paid almost exactly what he's supposed to pay, but the double minority, she paid a lot more. You know what I mean? Like $1,237 more than she should have paid for the car. Not only was she a woman, but she was also of color. So this double minority, it's not like they started using the N word or the B word or anything. No, they just charged her a higher price for the car. We could talk about all these housing studies as well. Okay, back to our good friend sociobiology. We've talked about it with attraction, altruism, aggression. So here we are again. Our drive for survival from a genetic evolutionary perspective promotes, our individual fitness. Basically, I'm looking out for my own health. Well, when I look out for my own health, I should be discriminatory. What does this mean? Well, I better discriminate between how I treat a saber-toothed tiger and a butterfly if I don't discriminate between how I eat a poisonous mushroom versus an edible one. You see what I mean? You have to discriminate. And so discrimination kind of promotes, well, not kind of, it does promote our individual fitness. We'll get into other kinds of fitness later. We've already talked about inclusive fitness before. Now, with these chickens, and you're probably wondering, why do I have a chicken on the screen? Well, chickens are kind of scaredy cat. They want to promote their individual survival. And so what they'll do, I don't know if you noticed that, but I flew this thing across the screen this direction. And when they fly it across that direction, I don't know if you noticed it, it seems kind of like a goose. But if they fly it across the screen, let me see if I can get it to do it this way. This direction, the chicken will scatter. Why? Because if it goes this direction, now at least it stayed on there, it looks like a goose or a plane maybe. If it goes this direction, it looks more like a hawk. And so it's the same exact stimulus, but this is a real studies. If you fly this thing around real chickens, on a screen, they'll scatter if it goes this direction, and they won't do anything if it goes this direction. Okay, so this promotes their individual fitness. I hope some of that made sense. Now, from this perspective, I should be a little bit neophobic. Neo is new, afraid of the new. Why? Because new things might kill me. A lot of people are scaredy cats like this. I'm a neophyte, but curiosity killed the cat. I love new things. Let's try it. Let's do it. But I've gotten into a lot of trouble being a neophyte, right? So you also should be a little xenophobic when you're trying to protect yourself. Either be afraid of new things or new kinds of strangers or foreigners. So this is where, to me, from an evolutionary perspective, I don't just run up and go, hey guys, how are you doing, if you're not from my tribe and you don't look like me? Because back in the day, you might get killed. From an evolutionary perspective, if you look like me, you might be from my tribe. And so I should protect you, and vice versa. And so maybe this makes sense to you, but just for the test purposes, this is being afraid of new things, and this is being afraid of strangers. I'm kind of the opposite. That's where I got myself into a lot of trouble. Hardin in 1968 came up with this thing called the tragedy of the commons. I want to focus on the commons because it puts these two things at odds. Remember individual fitness, looking out for me? We just talked about it. Inclusive fitness, I look out for the group. The prisoner's dilemma put these two things at odds, right? When the two prisoners get nabbed, either they can look out for the group and be quiet, or they can rat the other guy out, and look out for themselves. The commons are the common pasture area in an old English town. Everybody would live around it and they would share it. And so if everybody shares nicely, the pasture stays nice, is the idea. Now, think about in modern terms. This could be water, air, the freeway, whatever else you want to get into, the supermarket. It's like, how do we share these things? Do we share nicely, or do we look out for our own skin and kind of screw the group? Well, speaking of this, imagine there's 100 farmers that live around this pasture, and this pasture can only hold 100 cows. If every farmer only grazes one cow, hunky-dory. Everybody's taken care of. But you know how people are. There might be a farmer that goes, hey, dude, I want to sneak one extra one. They're not going to know if there's 101 on here. Even if 102, I could sneak 2 extras on there. So now look out for me, individual fitness, but because the pasture can only hold 100, it's going to get overgrazed, and then all the cows are going to start dying off because they don't have anything to eat. Does this sound familiar? So commons, it's not about grass or a pasture, it could be, but think about air or water, especially here in the desert, fuel, forest. I'm big on this one, we'll just eat up all the forest. How we share the roads or public spaces. So one of the examples I have, or two actually, comes from public spaces. Maybe it's public space. This is one of my pet peeves. When I go to the grocery store, everybody individually gets one of these things called carts, especially at Walmart, and they walk it all around Walmart. But then when they get to their car, they just leave it in the parking lot. And they go, oh, yeah, but it's so far away in the state. It's like, yeah, but you just carted your ass around 2 football fields in Walmart and you can't go another 10 yards to put your cart up, because if everybody just got a cart and put it back up, we don't have to hire all these people. And my car doesn't get banged up. And I don't have to drive around for 10 minutes looking for a space. I tell you what's even a bigger travesty is this. Don't get me started. But toilet paper. How much toilet paper do you need in the coronavirus? If everybody buys just what they need, then everybody's hunky-dory. The pasture. There's plenty to go around, but you get these hoarders and they run in. It's like, fuck everybody. I'm going to just buy enough for myself. And therefore, there's a shortage. There's really not a shortage. It's because the hoarders. Okay, I hope that made sense. More formally, the tragedy of the commons is known as realistic conflict theory. I don't really like this name, but for the test, realistic conflict theory is the tragedy of the commons. Musavar Sharif in 1966 talks about before Hardin had talked about his idea. Now, here's the idea. Conflict over scarce resources, remember the pasture, promotes separation and hostility. Well, what does that really mean? Let me give you the best example of all time. It's the most fucked up game of all time. It's called musical chairs. If you haven't been in one of my other classes, I usually go off on musical chairs because it's evil. Once the music stops, there's not enough chairs to go around, and you get a big fucking fight between the kids. This should sound familiar because it doesn't get any better once you grow up. There's not enough whatever to go around. Okay, so if there's enough to go around, we have this nice, happy communistic dream where Tim wants to live. But that's not going to work because as soon as there's not enough to go around, I don't care what it is. It's like that promotes this separation and hostility. Now, either we break down it's dog eat dog, or it's like maybe white people against, people of color, whatever it is. As soon as the, music stops, we start the fighting. So Hovland and Sears, what did they do? They went into the post-Civil War era where slaves had been freed and now they were in direct competition with white farmers. Now they looked at something dark. They looked at the price of cotton and how that related to lynchings. And what they found is anytime cotton prices dipped, like over time they could measure it, if that makes sense. Anytime there was a dip in cotton prices, you would get a rise in lynchings. Why? Because the competition got more fierce on who's going to sell their cotton, because nobody wants cotton right now and I can't unload it and get the price I need, and that guy's in competition and he's black and I'm white. Okay, so second example, our perceptions of Chinese people. 1971, these guys went back and did a historical analysis, and they found that during the gold rush, they were perceived as depraved, vicious, gluttonous, and bloodthirsty. Why? Because they were in competition with white people. But as soon as we needed railroads, don't get me started on white people right now, then all of a sudden, these same people is like, oh my God, they're very quiet and meek and follow the law and blah, blah, blah. But as soon as the railroads dried up, all that work, these same people were perceived, so it changed over time. If you can see my little graph back here. When times are good, if I can get my pen on here, then they're good. When times are bad, then they're bad. Right in Arizona, when times are good, then they're good. When times are bad, then they're bad. They made this movie, A Day Without a Mexican, because all these white people that complain about the border and all these Mexican people coming over here, and it's like, yeah, but who's going to do your yard and pick your lettuce and like do all these jobs you don't want to do? Whenever before the bubble, when all of Phoenix was getting built up, we didn't have any of this Latinophobia. But man, as soon as all that money went away, the Latinophobia and the build the wall and all this other shit came out. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. I think a little graph on here. Yep, musical chairs. Then I was proud of this. Then starts to promote this or this over here, because as soon as you start that musical chairs bullshit, you start getting that splintering downwards, and we don't work together as a team. This is the quote I'm going to show because I love Pope Francis, and he says, working for a just distribution of the fruits of the earth is not just philanthropy. He's talking about communism. If you really think about it, it's a moral obligation. For Christians, it's even bigger. He says it's a commandment. Where's the commandment? It's Matthew 25. Go look at the different things Jesus says you should do. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit those in jail, blah, blah, blah. He tells exactly what you should do, and it's all these acts of giving back to society. I'm going to switch gears now away from talking about nature and evolution and talk more about what it says, social factors, how we learn to be prejudiced and discriminatory. Okay, when I talk about social factors, I usually talk about labels, one of my least favorite things, and then I talk about one of my favorite Pink Floyd songs, Us and Them. As soon as we label us and them, we get discrimination, right? Because this is my problem with AA. The normies. It's like there are no normies. We are all addicts, just like you have a different addiction than me. You know what I mean? But we always label people into different groups. And you should have seen that with your Beehive project, right? If you did cocaine. Now, stereotypes, a lot of people are really down on them, including me, but they do help us simplify the world. And what do I have on here? A kernel. They might have a kernel of truth. One of the stereotypes I have is that Asian people are good at math. Now, it's like, that's not true for every single person that's, Chinese, Japanese, etc. It's like they're not all good at math, but maybe there's a kernel of truth to that. Okay, so this is another stereotype I have, that NBA basketball players are tall. It's like, is that true? It kind of is. So this one has more than a kernel of truth, right? A lot of stereotypes just have a little bitty kernel of truth or no truth at all. They're just totally racist and bullshit. Okay, but this one has a lot of truth, but I can always find exceptions to the rule. I mean, look at Muggsy Bogues. Love him because he's next to Michael Jordan, or Spud Webb. He's littler than me, can dunk the ball. Y'all don't remember these guys, I know. Or Earl Boykins next to Tim Duncan. It's like, so not all NBA players are tall. Okay, so then back to labels. If I was going to label Tiger Woods, maybe he's not the best example. A lot of people would label him as African American. But really, look at all of his categories. You don't label him as Native American, do you? Or Chinese or Thai, you might see that in there, but definitely not Dutch, I don't think. So that's what my problem with labels are, especially when you go to fill out, whatever your ethnicity is on all those forms. Okay, so the second thing is the in-group, out-group bias. Once we get us and them going on, well, that means I like me better than you because you're on my team. Just think about sports groups. The best thing of all time, us and them. It's like, oh, I like the Cardinals. It's like, well, I don't like the Cardinals. I like the Rams. And so you can get a fight going on just based on football teams. Now, Jane Elliott, back in the 60s, you can't see this, the day after Martin Luther King was assassinated, she did this famous study, the blue eye, brown eye study. And so what she did is she came in and she told her students that she had read some research that blue-eyed students are smarter than brown-eyed students. And so she would give the recess to the blue-eyed students, give them favors, etc. And pretty soon there was a lot of fighting just based on what your eye color was. And her whole point was that you can make kids be discriminatory based on anything, but us and them based on anything. Funny thing is, the next day she came in and said she was all wrong, and so she gave all the privileges to the brown-eyed kids and told the blue-eyed kids they were dumber and this, that, and the other. Not dumber, but, not as smart, blah, blah, blah. And so she reversed, this whole superiority thing. So the in-group, out-group bias is basically, I like my group better than I like your group. Why? Because I'm in my group. You know what I mean? It just makes sense. Okay, so this I definitely want you to remember for the test. That other one just makes sense. In-group, out-group variance. I don't know if you've had to take statistics, but when we talk about variance, when you look at members of your own group, like if I'm talking about white men or something, I might see a lot of differences. Let's just talk about Southern accents. Everybody goes, "Oh, you just have the Southern accent." It's like, yeah, but is it like from Tennessee or Arkansas or Texas or Mississippi or Alabama? I mean, it's different. I see a lot of differences because I've been to those southern states. So hetero, different. Just think about sexuality, different makeup, right? So I see there's more uniqueness within southern accents. Now, for the out group, let's just say, whatever, they all seem alike. I don't know. I don't have a lot of contact with them. So, oh, whatever. If you don't have contact with Southern people, you just go, oh, they just have a Southern accent, period. This is why they use the term Asian. It's totally racist because it's like, I don't know is what I'm really saying, right? They all seem alike. Homo, same makeup. That is a stereotype. In-group, out-group variance, where I see the out-group is all alike. Now, usually I think here, I can get it over here, I have this thing on racial facial identification. They all look alike. So what they'll do is these things where if I am a Caucasian person, they'll show me a bunch of Caucasian faces. This isn't the best picture, and then mix them up and say, pick out the one I just showed you. And I'm pretty good because I can tell the difference between white people because it's in my own group. But then if I have a person of color or let's say of Asian descent and then I mix them all up and then say, Tim, pick out the one I just showed you, it's like, they all look alike. It's like because I don't have as much contact. And if I get more contact with that out group, then I would see this. Okay, I think I have a funny movie on the next slide.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
I live in California last 20 years, but first come from Laos.
Huh?
Laos. We Laotian.
The ocean? What ocean?
We are Laotian. From Laos, stupid. It's a landlocked country in Southeast Asia. It's between Vietnam and Thailand, okay? Population 4.7 million.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
Oh.
I don't know if you like that as much as I do. I love it because, like, they're all alike. I can't tell. You know what I mean? He has no idea that people could be from Laos or any other kind of country. So let's just talk about red and green people and intelligence. If it's my own group, I could see it's like, okay, some people in my group are smart and some people aren't smart, and here's about the average. But all those red people are dumb. They're all dumb. That's what a stereotype is. They're all alike. And my group is a lot different. Now, this is like something called kurtosis, how flat or pointy a curve is. If you're taking statistics, you have skewness, how lopsided it is. But so you can see how pointy this one is because they're all alike. They're all stupid. But what happens is, and this is what I love, because I go and meet people from all different kinds of groups on purpose. When I was a kid, they said, don't go across the train track. You know, the white people live on this side and the black people live on that side. And I ran across the other side. And so when you start to run across the other side and get friends on the other side, you'll start to meet red people that are really smart and they'll start to bust your stereotype. I just use kindness. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about how smart you are. I just like care about how kind you are. But from low to high. And you'll start meeting nice people from groups that are, oh, Muslim, gay, this, that. And so I just started meeting, it's like start busting my stereotype. So I can't go back to that thing. I don't think I can go back on this one where they're all alike, they're all mean, or they're all stupid. I can't have those kind of stereotypes anymore. I might still have that slight affinity for my own group over your group. That's the in-group, out-group bias. But in general, I start to broaden my perspective and see that we're all alike, because I have contact. If I keep away from red people, I can always have this negative stereotype about them. And this is the last on this section from George Orwell. Y'all should be lucky I didn't make you read 1984, but if he were allowed contact with foreigners, he would discover that they are creatures similar to himself, and most of what he has been told about them is lies. In this section, I have 2 ways that we can maintain low opinions of minorities, and you've already heard of these. One is our good friend, the self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, so if you remember this here, if I have a preconceived belief about a person, it governs how I treat them, and then they react to my treatment, which confirms the stereotype. Now, what I have down here is about like separate but equal. White people, this comes from Robert Merton, I believe, used to have these preconceived beliefs about black people's intelligence, right? And so it influenced how they treat them. They sent them to separate schools, separate but unequal. They weren't equal. The white kids' schools were a lot better. And also white people constructed these standardized tests, and then lo and behold, black people didn't perform as well. And they go, see, black people aren't as intelligent as white people. It's like, yeah, but you forgot you treated them differently, and your treatment caused it to come true. Okay, so hopefully that one made sense, but that's our friend, the self-fulfilling prophecy. My stereotype causes me to treat you in such a way that confirms my stereotype. Now, the second way we can do this is ultimate attribution error. I think I talked about this one before. For an in-group member, let's just say I'm a white guy, which I am. If a white guy does good, then I say, oh, that's because he was smart or tried hard. And if he does bad, right here, I give him the benefit of the doubt and say, well, that was really hard task, you know what I mean? And so what does this do? It doesn't just give him a break, it gives other white men a break. And so I feel good about white men because white men perform well. And when they don't perform well, I have an excuse for white men. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but right over here I have a lady, dang it, a minority, and you can't see her, you know what I mean? And so in this case, where if she does good on the same exact task, I can just say, oh, well, see, that's because she got lucky. So whenever a minority actually performs good, I can always go, oh, well, they just got lucky. And then when they perform bad, well, you say, see, I told you, they're not smart enough, or they didn't try hard enough. They're lazy or stupid. And so this always can keep people in my out group down, women, let's say in this case, and men up. If you were in my gender class, I'd go off on this because we talk about success of men and women in STEM fields. And it's like, oh, she got lucky. Oh, well, he's a man. Of course he's good at physics and math. There's a lot of research on that. Sometimes when, let's say, a girl does good, you have to give her credit. You have to give her credit, right? She does good. Get out there on the tennis court and let her whip your ass. But then you can say, oh, but she's a special case. It's like, yeah, she did good, and it is because of her. I will give her the credit, unlike the ultimate attribution error. But I'm going to call her a special case, or she exerted such high effort, she overcame her female, handicap, whatever you want to call it, you know what I mean? And so this should kind of sound familiar from a racist perspective, because it is racist or sexist. I have two examples on here, like a lot of people I know that are racist against black people, they'll like someone like Denzel Washington, they'll go, oh, well, he's not really black. It's like, what do you mean he's not black? I've heard this before. It's like, well, he's not like other black people. It's like special case. Or they'll like Anderson Cooper even though they hate gay people. It's like, well, he's not like flamboyant. He doesn't rub it in your face, and he's not like that. Or they'll like Ellen, right? And so these are special cases that I'll give them a pass even though I hate gay people or black people, because they're not like the rest of them. Okay, this is the last area, which is hopefully the best area. How do we reduce prejudice and discrimination? I have Gordon Allport on here. He says one thing you have to have is direct contact. If you don't ever meet any gay people or Muslim people, how can you ever get to know them? And you'll always have this kind of homogeneous perspective of them. They're all alike. Of course you'll think they're all alike because you've never met any of them, don't see any variation amongst their group. But you have to have direct contact in certain kind of environment. You have to have equal status. There was plenty of contact between black and white people in the deep south, wasn't equal status. And cooperation. It can't be musical chairs. As soon as musical chairs comes around, it's like me against you, my group's better than your group. So what do I have here? It's like this right here. If you have cooperation and these two kind of things are going on, then you maybe get this pie in the sky, ultimate dream where we all kind of pull together as a team. You do see this in times. One of the things that makes us pull together as a team is common goals. If we're on teams to begin with, Gartner in 1989, I don't really like showing this study, but this is the way he did it. He would have people, let's say, be on a blue or a red team, kind of like sports. Let's like get into competition with each other. Pretty soon, if I'm on the blue team, I like blues better than reds. Reds are jerks, blues are great. They're on my team. Now, in a second part of the study, he would continue the competition, or he would do two other things. He would have everybody compete against one another, former teammates and enemies, or everyone work together. And if everybody worked together down here, then all of a sudden I liked reds better. I hope you're following my logic there. But in this case, if everybody was fighting dog eat dog, now I don't care if you were a blue or not. I hate you just as much as everybody else because I reduced my ratings of the former team members because you're all enemies. Okay, so this is my John Lennon quote right here. I love John Lennon. I love Imagine, right? Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. It's like everybody's possessions based, right? We would share the world. This is the hippie commie thing. But communism, communal, commons, the pasture. And so the thing that really brings us together more than a common goal, unfortunately, is a common enemy. I was just watching Saving Private Ryan last night. If you think about how war goes, then war unites us and them into we. All of a sudden we were against each other, but now we have a common enemy over there. Now we're on the same team. Think about World War II, the Axis powers. Maybe some of these guys over here were enemies to begin with, but they're fighting against us. Just like maybe we're not like best buds with Turkey or some of these other groups down in here, you know what I mean? But for purposes of the war, it's us and them. We develop this bigger us and them because now we have a common. Think about the propaganda. Oh my God, they're coming to get us. So that unites everybody. You think some of this propaganda that I have on here. I love showing propaganda, but think about even a better example is alien invasion. If aliens came down here, I don't care if you're white, black, straight, or gay, we're all humans, right? And we do have these movies where it's War of the Worlds or Independence Day. Now they have the second version of it. But anyway, now here's the aliens. We all got to fight against the aliens. Oh, think about how what 9/11 did. Terrorism is like this, especially like if you think about Al Qaeda or think about Osama bin Laden, how he in some ways united America. Now y'all are pretty young, but back in 2001, there were so many of these around. Everybody was on the same team because it's America versus everybody else, and so we got united or galvanized for that moment in time. Okay, so in these cases, sometimes cooperation, common enemies, or common goals will send us up to this common group. I love this quote from Martin Luther King because it illustrates my point. It says, "Our loyalties must transcend our race, tribe, class, nation." You have to go above that. You can't just say, I'm an American, I'm white, I'm this, I'm a Christian, whatever. And it says down here, we must either learn to live together as brothers or we're going to all perish together as fools. You can take that for what you will. Segregation and integration. This leads into the very last thing I promise. Segregation, keep people apart. Integration, put them together. I grew up in the deep south where there was busing. I went to Booker T. Washington Middle School. It's like when you talk about making people go together, integrate instead of segregate, Barry in 1984 talked about three kinds of people. Separatists, hey, we stay apart. You stay over there, we stay over here, that's fine. You just do your thing. I grew up with that. Black people, white people. My grandpa was the mayor of an all-white town, Falk, Arkansas. And so, anyway, Multiculturalists say, okay, well, we keep apart, but we interact a lot, but we keep our traditions and everything, but we interact a lot. So I'm going to talk and champion this one. And assimilators say, okay, we're going to mix everybody together and make everybody the same. This is like a science fiction nightmare. Okay, so for both sides, I don't think anybody wants that, either racist or not. Okay, so forced integration. This kind of comes back to self-perception theory. Remember when I talked about how I got forced into being a recycler because they would give me tickets, and then now I look around for recycling opportunities because I saw myself recycling. Now eventually I think I'm a recycler, but I got forced into doing it. Well, this is what they thought about. If we force it, when we'll force white people and black people to be together, then they'll have a lot of contact, and eventually they'll say, well, I'm a recycler. I like black people. I mean, I grew up around this nonsense, not at the same time, but these pictures are from Little Rock, Arkansas, just like, less than an hour's drive from my hometown. And it was like just 20 or 30 years before I grew up. So you think things changed that much? You know what I mean? And so the militia had to come out and escort black students in, not just the first day, every day. Every single day. And if we were in class, I would show a bunch of videos about this because I want to go off on it right now. Okay, so let me stop with that. I have these pictures on here that just like at first, there was this big divide, and then maybe eventually we get this thing right here. Integration leads to the whole recycling thing I talked about. If you want to do an extra credit, both of these movies are my all-time favorites. I love Gran Torino so much. I could talk about it all day long, but this is based on a real story of 3 students that went down to help black people and ended up getting killed. And so this movie is just amazing. So either one you could do for extra credit. Now, separatist, like I said, is like the train track. You live on your side. I see Tim would go across the train track. That's why I have a friend called Jimmy. You know what I mean? Jimmy Alcorn, because I went across the train track and he was black and I was white. Multiculturalists say, okay, we understand we have differences, but we're going to celebrate our differences. You remain, with your African traditions. I remain with my Anglo traditions, but we have a lot of contact and we celebrate each other, that we're different. Or, see, the melting pot is this thing. We're going to just try to put everybody into a melting pot and we'll all come out the same. At one time, this was championed, but now I don't think it's a good thing. Because it comes out looking the same. I like people looking different. That's like a smoothie. We're going to put everybody into the thing and make a smoothie. Now, that's my analogy for the assimilators. My analogy for multiculturalists, I stole this, is the salad. It's like, well, everything retains its uniqueness, like the tomato or the onion. I think that's supposed to be an onion, or the olive or the cucumber or the lettuce. But as you bite into it, you get the flavor of all of them working together. Or I could dump my salad into the smoothie machine and make a green smoothie. And I just don't want to have that because I like the textures and the uniqueness and how everything goes together. And I don't want them to be all the same. I don't want to have a salad with every single thing the same on it. Hopefully that makes sense what I just did there. I think this is the very last thing I have to show you. I love this quote. It's so simple. Why do men hate each other? Because they fear each other. And why do they fear each other? Because they don't know each other. And why don't they know each other? Because they're separated from each other. Thank you for being my student. I really loved having you in my class. Again, if you have any questions or comments, definitely give me an email. I'll talk to you next time.